Coming in at just a few dollars, it's understandable why the humble storage hook is the go-to for most mountain bikers when it comes to storing our bikes. Like most of you, I've used these hooks for years, and they've more or less done the job. But I'm willing to bet you're using them wrong, and in this video, I'm going to show you 5 ways that you're using the humble rubberized hook wrong for bike storage, and how to make it more useful. I've said it on the channel before, and I'll say it again. Stop mounting your hooks directly to a wall or ceiling. Regardless of your wall's material, if you screw the hook directly to a wall, it's going to cause damage. Unless you screw directly into a stud, these hooks provide way too much leverage for your bike when screwed into something that's only a fraction of an inch thick, especially if that something is drywall. What might start as a nice, cleanly drilled hole will eventually slop out, cause play in the hook, and eventually cause your bike to fall off the wall or ceiling. Even if you plan to screw directly into a stud, these threads are huge and you're permanently drilling a 1/4 inch thick hole into your ceiling or wall. Instead, mount the hook to a 2x4 or 2x6 and mount that to your wall. This allows you to put those massive holes into something that can easily be moved or replaced, while putting much smaller screw holes into your wall or ceiling. This piece of 2x4 or 2x6 is significantly stronger and will provide a much better hold for your bikes. This also allows you to store a lot more bikes into less space than if you were to mount the hooks directly to the studs.
Oh, I messed that up. Shoot.
And even customize your spacing depending on what bikes you have and how you want them oriented. You can even take it a step further by staggering the hooks vertically in order to squeeze every inch out of storing your bikes in a tight space if needed. These hooks are rated for 50 pounds each when attached to a stud, and are more than capable of holding your bikes to the wall. The next thing that you're doing wrong when using these hooks is that you're not placing them high enough on the wall. It might be enticing to leave your hook a little bit lower so that you can roll your bike into the hook without needing to lift your bike off the ground. But this allows your wheel and handlebars to turn. This not only makes for a sloppy and unsecure storage, but can also cause damage to your bikes when banging into each other. This happens because there's only one singular point of contact on the wheel, and gravity allows for the wheel to flop over. If you mount the hook higher on the wall and allow your bike to hang freely, this allows for 2 points of contact around the wheel and gets the center of gravity below the hook's contact point. Similar to balancing a wheel on your hand, if you grab that wheel from 2 different locations, it's much easier for the wheel to remain stable and standing upright. Similarly, if the hook is contacting the wheel from one point and the wheel is contacting the wall from another, gravity does its thing and keeps the wheel pointing straight at the wall and avoids any unwanted wheel turning. This does require a little lifting in order to get your bike into the hook, but maybe we can solve that in a future video. If you're trying to save space and pack as many bikes into as little space as possible, hanging your bikes in the same direction is another way that you're using these hooks incorrectly. If you're already lifting your bike to get it onto the wall or ceiling, you could also lift your bike to hang it rear wheel first on every other bike to pack them in as closely as possible. In most cases, handlebar width is the limiting factor on how close you can store your bikes, even when staggering the hooks vertically. Alternating the direction of every other bike allows you to store your bikes much closer together because handlebars are now on opposing ends, and pedal placement falls between the wheel and the frame of the bikes next to it. If you're really trying to tuck bikes together as close as possible, you'll find that you might need to pivot the bike slightly if you're trying to grab a single bike from the middle of your stack. Coinciding with the last tip, positioning the hooks in opposing directions, or at least positioning them strategically, makes loading and unloading your bikes much easier. If you have multiple hooks to store multiple bikes side by side, and each hook are facing the same direction, you're using them wrong. At the very least, the outside 2 hooks should have the openings facing away from the other bikes. This allows you to load and unload your bikes from the outside without needing to approach the hook from the side where other bikes are hanging. You also may find that some bikes are easier to load and unload than others. For me, my gravel bikes are much narrower and much lighter than my enduro bikes, so it's much simpler to load those in the center of the rack than trying to navigate a big heavy enduro bike into the middle of other bikes. It also makes the most sense to store your most used bikes on the outside of your stack. For example, my dirt jumper gets used only a few times per year, and while it would be more effective to store that between our enduro bikes from a space savings perspective, it doesn't make sense to further lock my wife's bike deeper into the stack. As bikes in general become heavier and heavier with the increased popularity of e-bikes, enduro bikes, and fat bikes, it becomes harder and harder to lift these bikes into their designated storage spaces. I wanted to take a break from our overly nuanced DIY discussion and tell you about today's sponsor, Delta, and their award-winning pivot rack. The pivot rack features a folding tire rack that cradles the front tire, aids in lifting as you roll your bike into place, and avoids contact with your rims and spokes for a safe and effective bike storage. The pivot rack can pivot a full 150 degrees, giving you a wide range of motion to maximize storage space or get other bikes out of the way when loading and unloading. When not in use, the pivot rack folds up against the wall for a clean and organized look. My favorite part of this rack is the adjustability, and is personally something I haven't seen on other storage solutions. It's vertically adjustable in 1.4 inch increments, with up to 13.8 inches of total adjustability. This allows you to store bikes of different lengths in the same rack, without needing to lift your bike or change the rack's mounting location. Compatible with 20 to 29 inch wheels and up to 4.25 inch tire widths. You'll find that most bikes in your arsenal are suitable for the pivot rack, especially considering that this rack holds bikes up to 100 pounds. Available in black and silver, the pivot rack by Delta looks great both empty on your wall or loaded up with your trusty steed. Check out the link in the video description for more information on the pivot rack and pick one up for yourself. Thanks to Delta for sponsoring this video. Moving on to the last way that you're using the humble bike storage hook wrong, and I'm absolutely guilty of this one, is using the hook as is. I prefer these black metal hooks over some of the other options due to the size and strength of the metal. But the black coating isn't actually rubber. It's just a thin vinyl coating that will absolutely peel off in a short period of time. Some hooks have slightly thicker coatings, but the hook itself tends to be smaller and bends much easier.
Just kidding. Ha! Just the rubber.
When the vinyl wrap inevitably peels off, you're left with bare steel contacting your rims. With every load, unload, and bike adjustment while hanging from that hook, that bare steel is grinding away at your bike rims. Whether just causing cosmetic damage or degrading the strength of your carbon hoops, it's easily preventable. Start by removing the factory vinyl to expose the bare steel. We're going to replace this with a thicker, much more resilient rubber hose. Use a hose that has the same inner diameter as the outer diameter of the metal hook. In my case, a 3/8 inch inner diameter vinyl hose worked perfect. Getting the hose on can be a bit tricky, but applying some form of a lubricant can help. You could also try to apply a little heat to make the hose slightly more pliable.
It looked ugly, but that worked really well.
Let me know down in the comments if you found any of these tips useful, and if there's anything you do to make the humble rubberized storage hook more useful and practical when storing your bikes. Thanks again to Delta for sponsoring today's video, and be sure to check out the link in the description for the full list of products that Delta has to offer. If you like this video and you want to see more just like it, make sure that you're subscribed.